So, people learn from education, but my preference is storytelling. And you may have been around with this podcast for a long time and known it by many different names over the years. It has been named a fair few. And I feel like it's taken this amount of time to stumble across, and I would say stumble because it is an ever evolving journey, why I want to be involved with this podcast to begin with. And that is to always be able to leave somebody with something, a golden nugget that can help you change your life in some way, shape, or form. So the decision has been made to turn this podcast into, let's say, a storytelling podcast. And if you're somebody that has a story that's impacted your health, your position in life, your personal development, I want to hear from you. So you can get in touch with me on all of the usual social media platforms. So you can contact me at Coach Andy James pretty much everywhere, or you can email me at info@impacthealthclub.co.uk and reach out to me because I'd be interested in having you on the podcast to have a chat about what it is that you did and how you got to where you are with the story that you've got to tell. But we've all got stories. And that being said, I've got Dr. Jill Hamilton with me today, and I'm going to turn the tables a bit today, and I'm going to ask Jill if she wants to. In fact, I know there is because she's already told me there's a few things that she wants to kind of get a little bit of open conversation opinion on, and where she's been with what she's been experiencing and that journey that she's been taking herself, and kind of turn the tables on me a bit and see what I would do with this. So again, thank you for being here, Dr. Jill Hamilton. I'm going to refer to you as Jill in this one because this is more of a me and you conversation. And I want to be able to give something back in the sense of, like I say, telling a story, because education doesn't always sit very well with people. A lot of the time, and I'm the same. I prefer to listen to audibles, etc. If it comes down to education and sitting with a textbook, I don't always learn the best way by reading or having that information drilled into me in as such. But if I can listen to it in a person's story, it generally tends to sit with me a lot longer and I can recall that a lot easier. So I want to kind of approach this from me being able to share from my experiences and my story by you asking some of the questions this week. So I'm going to say, where are you at and why are we here to begin with the questions that you've got in front of you today?
So, hello. So the main reason that I wanted to have this discussion today is because I think all this sort of work that people are trying to do on themselves is really beneficial. But I think a lot of people struggle as well, especially if they aren't getting the wins that they've hoped for, or they can feel a bit like a failure if they're not achieving things that they've set out to. And I do see it a lot in my patients where there's a lot of low-level anxiety, depression, and lots of things are put down sort of perimenopausal symptoms, which may well be part of the case. But I think there's also other things that are going on as well. And I think since I sort of had my own sort of personal fitness and wellness journey, I just thought it'd be interesting to share a few things. So I think when I started working with you a few years ago, one of the things that, I wanted to tackle with things like diet and exercise and getting myself into a regime. That was really what my mindset was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just massively expanded to lots of other things since then. So, and I think a lot of people are quite good at starting a diet, starting an exercise regime, and they may have some goals, certain, amounts of weight that they want to lose, and they can achieve those, but it's all quite short term, isn't it? And to try and get those long-term mindset changes to how you change your life, that's trickier. And I think those are the things that I struggle with. And I think I do well sometimes, and then other times commitments change, and then you struggle and you have to revisit those things. One of the things that I find that each time you revisit them, they do get easier. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Andy, was about sleep. So I always thought I slept extremely well. As soon as I got to bed, I was asleep and I woke up in the morning. Quite often don't feel great when I wake up, feel a bit hungover, even if I've had no alcohol. And it takes me a long time to wake up. So then I started looking into my sleep and looking at my Apple Watch, monitoring my sleep, and find out that I had hardly any deep sleep. It was all, quite light sleep or REM sleep. And once I try to tackle that, I do feel better. So what would your advice be to somebody to try and sleep better?
So for me, the thing with sleep, the importance of sleep, when I was going through my sort of like the deep despair of my mental health battle, I was massively struggling with insomnia. There'd be bouts of sleep deprived days where I'd go maybe 2 or 3 days with probably no more than 30 to 60 minutes of sleep in a space of 24 to 36-ish hours. And as you'd expect, you start to kind of feel the full-blown effects of sleep deprivation at that point, and it creates a whole other world of problems that you get. Now, I know this is on the extreme side of things, and it's kind of deviating a little bit, but I just wanted to explain why sleep is of such an importance to me now, because understanding where I was struggling to begin with really it allows me to focus on why my sleep's so important these days. So up until prior to my breakdown, the sleep side thing for me was like anybody else. I was just a normal person making the same decisions day in, day out, where you think, hey, you know what, I'll just watch this program until 1 o'clock in the morning and I'll go to bed and I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and I'll get back to work. And you keep doing this and then you go and catch up on a weekend and you kind of just live this chaotic lifestyle, this chaotic routine of how you treat your sleep. Then I went through the deprivation part, and that really changed how I felt about sleep at that point. Now, me understanding sleep didn't come until about 7 years after going through the mental health thing. So probably in the last 3-4 years is really where I started to pick up information on sleep. Now, it started with a book called Why We Sleep. So you can always go and have a quick Audible, download it, etc., order it. It's 100% worth listening to, because there's some valuable information in there that will help you understand why you sleep and how to improve sleep, even just minimal things. But the first thing I would look at is we hear the numbers banged into us all the time about how much sleep we should be getting. If you're getting less than 6 hours a night, you are going to feel the effects of this very drastically on how you perform, how you think, how your mental health's dealt with, also how your dietary requirements are stacking up with the choices that you're making, and also your energy balance. It's massively underrated, sleep, in how it allows us to operate. And I think being somebody that's focusing on how I operate on a day-to-day basis over maybe the last 7 or 8 years, it was probably the one area that I wasn't paying the most amount of attention to until I started to understand more about what sleep can do for me. I was dialed in on exercise, training was going well, nutrition was always well. I'd say I was doing all of the personal development things, but I was robbing time from sleep. I was stealing those hours from sleep to try and do all of the things that you should be doing when you're building a business. And that whole, I'll sleep 4 hours and I'm still going to be as effective. No, you're not. It's never going to happen. And you're not going to get anywhere near the level of productivity as you would do if you were treating your sleep better. So where would I start? And I think that was the question that you're asking, is where would I start? What would I identify? And what would I do to help somebody move forwards that was struggling with sleep? First of all, yes, you need to be mindful of how many hours of sleep you are getting in a week. Even in a night, it can vary from night to night. So you can kind of base this on the whole calorie intake version of the week. So accumulatively over the week, the average. But what I would say is try to be as rigid as you can with a bedtime and a wake time. And I know for some people this is a challenge because they want to try and offset their evening habits with bingeable TV and kind of justifying the value of all the hard work they've done today. So they kind of steal a few of those hours from sleep. You will benefit 10 times more by getting the sleep and going to bed early than what you would do by staying up and feeling that you're justifying yourself by staying up. Now, what you mentioned was the quality of sleep. And I know we've had this conversation numerous times, and I've asked you, especially on weekly check-ins, is how's sleep? Plus 7 hours, I never have a problem with sleep. And I've always kind of gone, okay. And I know we ran that sleep challenge not long ago, and I challenged you to pay more attention to the different stages of your sleep. And that was where the key, highlighting area of what was lacking in how you was physically operating and performing. And the thing that you was missing was that deep sleep. And that will kind of be the knock-on effect of waking up first thing in the morning. You feel groggy, you feel a bit groggy, lethargic. You're not very clear-headed, a bit foggy feeling. I know, I felt it. Most people do feel it, especially if you're not aware of how you are tracking your sleep. And there's no physical way of knowing unless you are wearing a smart device. you kind of just go to bed and expect that I'm in bed for 7 hours and I get the sleep that I need. You don't. And if you are somebody that is needing to pay more attention to, or you're demanding, let's say, more attention of how you perform, what you do on a day to day basis, you need to start paying attention to sleep. 7+ hours, get good split between your REM sleep, your deep sleep, and your light sleep. If you're wearing a smart device, the wearable will actually tell you what windows that you should be in, and it will also give you good identifying markers of what's lacking and what needs more attention. And then you can start to manipulate those areas to improve each one of those. And it's all to do with habits. So anything to do with sleep always starts before you go to bed, and how you wake up is the quality of the sleep that you've been having. So chances are your sleep's been impacted by the stress carried through the day, how you've wound down at night, the blue light that you're consuming before you go to bed, how active your mind is, your stress levels, and that bedtime routine. The quality of your sleep is massively dependent on all of those factors kind of brought together.
No, that's really helpful. And I think for me with sleep, I've had to really think about the why. Why is it important for me? Because otherwise, I think I'll go to bed and I'll have exactly the same habits. I'll start doom scrolling on my phone, checking my emails, or working really late at night, think I'm just going to do a few more results. I'm just going to do another referral. And I think through working with you, one of the things I've realised is that there's always a trade-off. So me sort of clearing all my work into the late hours, or early hours of the morning, you clear your work, but then the next day you are no way as productive. So for me, that was a why, was I need to be more productive. That's what I want. And then the other thing, I love a deep dive, or I love going down a wormhole. I'm notorious for that. And then so I've started sort of thinking about other things as well that's sleep related. So for me, things like Alzheimer's disease, I've done, a bit of reading about sleep, and actually when you're in that deep sleep phase, that's when your brain is clearing itself. It's essentially got like a lymphatic system called the glial system. And that's when you're having your deep sleep, that's when that system is cleaned, and that's how you sort of rejuvenate yourself. And I think one of the thoughts is that if you are getting good deep sleep, that you are going to have a reduced chance of developing something like Alzheimer's. And I think for me, the aim is that you live as long as possible, as healthy as possible. So I think that's helped greatly, having a reason why I'm doing these kind of things. So the next thing that I find hard, and I'm constantly having to revisit, is stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that I thought I was relatively good at dealing with stress until I wasn't, until I was at capacity, until I couldn't deal with any extra that was thrown at me. I was pretty much every day home to bed, and that was it. I couldn't deal with anything else. If I got anything unexpected, I'd be snappy. I'd feel like everything was, overwhelming or breaking down, when in fact it wasn't. It was just another, quite small thing, but actually it seemed like very big things at the time. So I've started to try and tackle stress sort of head on. So look for things before they come, or appreciate how I'm going to deal with a situation if I'm overloaded, to try and stop being overloaded. When I did a little bit of deep sort of introspective thinking, I realised that I would have a stressful day and I would need to wind down from that stressful day. So I would sort of try and reward myself with things. So maybe that would be go and have I'll wait till the weekend and then we'll go out and we'll have a nice dinner and some wine and things like that. Or maybe a glass of wine on a Tuesday night, that kind of thing. And then you realise that you wake up on a Thursday, even if it's just been that glass of wine, or, the night before, something like that, and it's unhelpful. It's not a good coping mechanism. It doesn't produce any good results. But unless you think of it in that way, you just see it as a glass of wine. So for me, I was able to identify some not very healthy coping habits. And one of the things I've realised recently is this sort of idea of middle lane drinking, that you're not probably drinking much over the recommended limits. You're probably not doing long-term health damage, but actually you probably are impeding your potential, or, it's just not a healthy thing to get into. Other things, maybe things like, just coming home and watching mindless TV that you're not really interested in, or doom scrolling, and you're getting that sort of quick, cheap dopamine hit. So one of my question to you, Andy, is about stress. How would you recommend people try and tackle it head on?
I think for stress, it is you've got to self-identify where you're at with stress to begin with. Stress is different for every single person. I mean, I've worked with a few thousand people over the years now, and I would say every single time I've come across an individual that has a very chaotic life, that lives on the borderline brink of burnout continuously, stress is an individual coping mechanism. Try not to look at stress as being stress. Stress is how you respond to stress, is a coping mechanism that a person puts in place to handle the volume of what they have going on in their daily lives, and then justify, can they add any more volume to that? Now, I'm going to kind of spin the table around on this a little bit and say, if we flip it over and have a look at what's on the other side, is have you ever been at a point where you've had zero stress in your life and then seen the benefits of having no stress and what you actually achieve? So if that cup of stress was completely empty and you could go about your day to day with zero stress involved, how good does that day to day feel? How much of an impact do you have on the tasks, on self-management, being self-aware, on everything that goes around you when there is no stress filling that cup? You get a lot done. You feel completely different. You view the world in a different way. But it's very, very easy. The thing is with stress, it's like that slow trickling tap, is that it's always there in the background, just dropping away, filling that cup up constantly. And unless you check in with yourself and say, well, where am I at with my stress? How full is my cup right now? If you don't know how much you can bear in that cup, you don't know how much stress you can physically bear in your day-to-day life. So what you start to look at is building and operating with all of that stress in the cup, and how you then on a day-to-day basis self-manage that. So somebody like yourself, who is high pressure career, lives in a very, very busy lifestyle, you get very good at self-managing where that stress is managed. And it may come through rewardables, like we've mentioned previously, or how you justify decisions at the end of a day, where it might be the scrolling, the TV, the glass of wine, it might be dietary choices, whatever it may be. People find a way to justify the coping mechanism to say, well, I've filled my cup up pretty full today with stress that I can bear. I'm going to reward myself by a takeaway. Right. Well, let's face it. Tomorrow morning, you're going to feel a bit on the groggy side for making that choice the night before. Your stress is already having more added to this the following day because you didn't clear the cup. You didn't get rid of the problem that was there in the first place. You kind of created a distraction to say it's okay for me to think about something else right now and feel good about that in the moment. You wake up the following day, performance takes a hit, clarity takes a hit. You can't operate the way that you wanted to. Therefore, what's on your schedule doesn't get complete. Bang. All of a sudden, you've got now more stress on your plate. And how do you manage that? You make the same choice as you did the night before and you do something differently. It might be a glass of wine this time, and the cycle repeats itself. So the thing is with stress is you have to be able to look at how you identify the stressing factors of what's going on. And I think any person's daily responsibility is to look at how can I clear the stress from the cup as much as possible to allow me to operate in the best space that I can the following day. Not an easy task, trust me, I know. And also, saying this sounds like it could be a complicated process, but the reality is that most people aren't self-aware enough to know how they've got themselves into this position in the first place. They'll just say, oh, well, I can't get rid of the stress. It's picking the kids up from school, it's running a business, it's dealing with my career, it's dealing with my partner or whatever it may be. But the reality is that there's micro factors in all of those scenarios that can be managed to improve the situation. You've just got to be willing to go into stress and say, well, what is inside of the stress that's creating this response for me, and how am I reacting to this? That way you'll understand what's stressing me out, what do I need to do to actually decrease the stress in the situation, and it's not run straight at it. Stress can be handled in a way where you can run at it and you can clear some of the stress from the cup by tackling those things, if they're things that you've been avoiding for a very long time. But truth be told, majority of stress is actually built from our daily habits and the routines that we create, and we allow that to take up space in our daily habits. We don't need to. We can actually look at this and say, well, what happens if I adjust the way that I'm managing this particular element of stress? If you can reduce the stress factor on that, all of a sudden you feel better for it. You get more energy out of it because you're expending less energy in another area mentally and physically. The result changes, and now you're managing stress in a different way. The ever evolving process of this is stress always changes. And that's the beauty, but also the demon inside of it all is you've got to be forth thinking. So you've got to be thinking forwards of how do I evolve as this evolves with me? Because you have to be able to grow into the new levels of what you're going to be facing moving forwards. I'm going to use you as the example here though, Jill. So I know that you're a person that likes to take on growth. You like to take on development, and this is personal, this is career, this is health. And there hasn't ever been a point of me knowing you where you're not always looking forward to the next thing. And I can guarantee when that next thing comes, and it's not a bad thing to look forward to in that way. This is not a criticism. This is a reward in the sense of you're looking to extract full potential at all times. That next thing always involves some stress. And there's something that you're starting very soon that has another element of stress on life that is going to demand time, energy, mental capacity, and all of these things that you're going to have to figure out as you move forwards. You don't ignore that stress from the get-go and just go, oh, well, I'll just take this on and see where I go from there. You've kind of got to see where the stock is right now. Like, what's my stock in stress? Have I got space in my life to add this stress in right now? If you have, fantastic. You're going to gain benefits, bucket loads moving forwards. But if you're maxed out already, you've got to ask yourself, is this the right time for me to say, this is the right time for me to make this decision to move forwards? This stress that I'm about to actively ask for is going to impede the way that I can actually progress moving forwards if I'm not operating at my full potential. So stress is individual. Stress needs to be identified. It needs to be understood. But I think the biggest job you need to do on a day-to-day basis is focus on clearing as much of that stress from that cup that's got that slow dripping tap. You need to clear as much of that as you can on a day-to-day basis so that you've got more of you available for the upcoming day, for that new day ahead. Because otherwise you'll end up carrying a full cup 24/7 and you'll feel like you're forever overflowing with stress and you're not actually coping as well as you could be.
So, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've learned with working with you is being actually sort of planning for that stress rather than just showing up. I wouldn't give a presentation at work and just wing it. So I think it's a bit like that, isn't it? Actually thinking about the stress, probably 70% of the stress that I have on a daily basis, I can anticipate. And one of the things that we've talked about is almost having that emergency plan. So when things don't go to doesn't go to plan, have you got something you can just pull out, and that's your sort of your go-to backup plan to stop everything falling apart. So I think things like that I found really helpful. The other thing that I found quite helpful as well is rethinking my reward system. So when I want to go and get that glass of wine, why am I going for that? Am I thirsty? Do I just want something nice to drink? And is it just part of my winding down ritual? So something that I've found for me that's been quite a game changer is actually some of these non-alcoholic alternatives. So, some of the, which I always thought wouldn't be very nice or would just be a waste of money. But I really like the low alcohol or the zero alcohol lagers now. And sometimes just putting something in like a nice wine glass or champagne glass to drink gives you that same ritual.
Yep.
And it is for me, I think, having a nice glass of something and relaxing. It doesn't really matter, as long as it tastes nice. So I've been going for some of the non-alcohol, nice, sugar-free sort of healthy drinks and things. So that's massively helped as well, because I still get the ritual, but I don't have any of the side effects. And one of the things that I was noticing with alcohol was even though in quite small amounts, I was sort of getting low level anxiety. And, I would be going to bed worrying about decisions I'd made in the day because, as a GP, sometimes we're making very fast paced decisions. So, things like that. And I know that I check things, but I would have that low level anxiety. And I do definitely feel that since I pretty much don't drink very much at all anymore, I found that has massively helped. And I think on the other side of it, sort of just rethinking my rewards. So instead of sort of mindlessly scrolling or something like that, I'll go and buy something nice, gym kit or a new pair of leggings or something. So those rewards are actually quite beneficial. It's not just, unproductive rewards. So that I found those things quite helpful. So, I mean, I guess this is on the same sort of wavelength of what we've just been talking about, is actually when I said I was close to burnout or very stressed, I couldn't really deal with unexpected things. So whether that was business things, family things, or financial things, anything that wasn't expected seemed a much bigger problem than it really was. So, have you got any advice about how to deal with the unexpected?
Dealing with the unexpected. I think life is unexpected on a day-to-day basis. You can plan, you can preempt, you can do all of the things that's in your controllables to foresee what you want in front of you. But life is life, and every single day it does throw a curveball every now and again. I think for an individual to say, how can I deal with the unexpected the best way that I can? One of the first things I would say is you have to become very quick in being self-aware, because I think it's more about reaction than being capable of coping with unexpected things. Because unexpected things happen all the time. You could wake up tomorrow and lose the ability to hear, see, whatever that may be, and it changes life completely for you. Being able to be self-aware of where you're currently at, what things are impacting you, how you're self-managing that's going to really be the dictator, let's say, in how you cope with the unexpected. Most people tend to react rather than respond. And I think when you react to something, it's kind of a pushback on what's currently happening. So I'm a stippler for this. So I'm going to be completely and totally transparent. I hate change. I'm not an individual that likes change. And that comes down to, again, personal programming with the mental health things that I went through, because structure really helps me manage myself moving forwards. So it takes me a while to adjust to change. Now, day-to-day life, things can change in an instant. A conversation, an email, a piece of mail, whatever it may be, can change the outcome of what you got planned for your entire day. Now, being somebody that doesn't handle change very well, it can make me very reactive. And when I say very reactive, it doesn't mean that I'm making poor decisions. It just means that I'm not processing what's going on at that point in time very well. So I'm focusing on being in a reactive state rather than being proactive or responsive to that. So responsive would be, how do I go from being reactive to responsive? Is how do I identify what this change is and see the solution or the conclusion to that as quick as possible? You can hold on to the same scenario for as long as you want, but you can also overcome it as quick as you need to. And it's all down to you in that moment to say, well, what is this thing that's off plan? How much is it actually going to impact me? And what do I need to do to overcome this as quick as possible? On a day-to-day basis, it's going to give you a tool that you can kind of navigate the unexpected in a very different way. But what I would say is every unexpected event is something that's an opportunity if there is a challenge in there for you to either grow or learn from. Either whether that be growing in yourself to know how you can manage with something at scale or magnitude of the stress or the complication or whatever that change may be. But how quick can you actually summarize what needs to happen, weigh that up in an instant, and then all of a sudden say, well, I'm so self-aware of how I will respond to an unexpected piece of news, an event, or whatever that may be, that you can already, like you were saying, Jill, you can already pre-plan. You kind of have a a response mechanism in place already, because you can access that as fast as possible, and your skill sets become transferable in how you start to manage stresses, unexpected news, etc. That kind of, it makes it challenges for us to be able to move forwards. It's not always about recognizing a response or looking for a reward or getting past that thing that's unexpected and then saying, well, I got past this, so I reward myself from this. And that might be the food, a takeaway, self-sabotage. Most people tend to choose the things that don't really serve them very well. But I think for me, and I know for a fact this is rubbed off on you as well, is you've changed the way that you look for the reward system in looking at challenging tasks or challenging those unexpected events. And how you do that is when you start to look at those events, you see the growth inside of them rather than seeing the complications and frustrations in the challenge. And I think that's the whole direction, that turn where people say, well, run at those challenges, run at those tasks and complications. It's about really what you get from inside of those complications in the sense of challenge and reward, and how you build that for yourself from the potential that you'll learn. That, I think, is the most fundamental factor of growing as an individual, to overcome stress quickly, navigate challenges at a rapid response, is being so self-aware that you've got this toolkit of, I already know the response to this. I can access this as quick as possible because I'm very self-aware of how to manage this unexpected piece of news. Therefore, it doesn't actually change my day or my event or how I'm physically feeling as much as it would if I was just to react to this in a negative way.
Okay. So again, I think that's some really helpful advice. And I think one of the things that I've realised that I need is to have that reserve. So when that unexpected thing happens, that I have got the sort of the ability, the sort of resilience to deal with whatever's, cropped up. And I think if you're always maxing out yourself and you're maxing out your reserve and you've been working for 150% every day, you are not going to have that reserve. So I think for me, things like having regular holidays, regular time off, those kind of things that are booked in advance, things that aren't just sort of planned the week before, oh, okay, I can have a bit of time off work now, let's book a last minute holiday. That's actually quite stressful in itself. So actually making sure you've got that reserve. Now, I know I've struggled in the past with, going to work, and if you can't give 150% and you think that everybody else around you is looking at you thinking, oh yes, you've done over and above again today, that you feel a little bit of less self-worth and things like that. And I think that's something that maybe is a confidence thing. And as I've got older, I'm caring less what other people think, and knowing as long as my intention every day to show up and to work as hard as I can, but still having that bit of reserve, because I know that if somebody calls in sick or something like that, I'm the one that has to go in the next day on my day off. And I can't be relying on that, that to be my only downtime. So I think making sure that you've got that bit of reserve is also really helpful. A couple of things that I think I've learned that might be just quite a good, thing to share is, I think I've also learned not to be sort of competitive with people. I think as I've got older, I've got a really good friendship network. A lot of people still from university and from sort of when I was training. And I think, especially in medicine, there's always sort of competition element. Oh, I want to do the best in this or that. And I think what I've really enjoyed getting older is actually sort of sharing things with other people, helping each other, and having this more of a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. If somebody else does well, that doesn't mean you haven't done well. Everybody can do well. And I think that's such a more positive way to think. And I think, and it's, again, if somebody does something and has a financial reward, that doesn't mean that there's any less financial reward for you. So just thinking of things in that way of, sharing and collaborating with others. I quite often talk to my friends, and we've all got quite different lifestyles. And other people will give me, hints and tips, and I'll give them hints and tips. And rather going down all these wormholes yourself, which take quite a lot of time, I think sort of working in collaboration with other people is really helpful. And I think I've also thought about investing in myself rather than things. Again, just buying things mindlessly because you think it's going to make you feel better. often doesn't. And actually, if I'm going to invest or spend money on things, I think when all my obligations are commitment meant, spend that money on yourself, on developing yourself. So I think these are all things that I've probably learnt with you. And I think they've helped me sort of move forward. And I just think that it's quite helpful to share your wins and things. And I just think going forward, having that growth mindset is really helpful.
Sharing wins. I think we'll end with sharing wins, because I think that's one thing that people don't do often enough, is they don't identify when they are winning with something. And this is a reminder for me as well right now. Being in business for the majority of my adult life, you feel like you have very few wins and more fails and more feedbacks, let's say, than you do wins. But when you do kind of identify one of those wins, you have to take stock of the energy, the effort, the commitment that you've put in to why that win is right here, right now. And that win doesn't need to be the next biggest thing that comes along. It really doesn't. It can be as little as tracked all my food today, or I made it to the gym, or I got to bed on time, or I spent time with a significant other. Those small wins, when you stack them, they compound and they give you back 10 times more than what you will ever understand if you constantly push away celebrating the things that you're working towards just because you feel guilty, rewards not deserved, or whatever that may be in the sense of value and self-worth. It's a constant reminder, and like I say to myself as well, waking up first thing in the morning and just thinking, you know what? I'm at this age in life. I'm at this stage in life. I've worked towards this. I've done this. I've achieved this. What have I actually celebrated along the way to say to myself, pat on the back? Today could be a better day for just waking up and saying, you did good yesterday. It was a difficult day, but you get up today. You've got another opportunity in front of you because today's not promised and it's another gift. So go and make the most of it. Celebrate what you do today. And if you get to the end of the day and you've completed that very, very well, good work. It's all you need. Right. Thank you, Jill. I appreciate it. What I will say is, if you've got an interesting story that is personal development, health related, if you've got something that can help others move forwards, I'd love to hear from you. So you can contact me at info@impacthealthclub.co.uk or on any of my social media platforms, just at Coach Andy James, and you'll find me on there. Send me a message because I'd love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Impact Your Evolution is going to be a different type of podcast moving forwards. We're going to be leaning a little bit away from being more education based. We're keeping the Medfit episodes though, because they are massively helpful. But we are going to be storytelling, because I think storytelling is the way that impacts most people, because they can recall those stories in an instant that's going to help them move forward. So appreciate you for being here. Thank you as always. We'll catch you in the next one. And if you've got one of those stories, I look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care. See you soon.